How many times have you found yourself reliving memories you'd rather forget? Emotional wounds that insist on resurfacing like ghosts, reminding you of everything that hurt, everything that was lost, everything that hasn't yet healed. Past traumas have this power to paralyze the present and imprison the future. It's like carrying an invisible suitcase full of pain, rejection, and bitter memories, weighing so heavily that it often seems impossible to move forward. But I want to ask you a question that might change the way you look at yourself. How long will you allow the scars of yesterday to determine the life you can live today? Trauma isn't just a fact that happened. It's a wound in the soul, which remains open whenever you touch it. For some, this means rejection from their parents. For others, it's the pain of betrayal, the loss of a loved one, the violence suffered, or the cruel words that become inner voices repeating, "You're not good enough, you don't deserve to be happy." Perhaps you know all too well what it means to smile on the outside but be destroyed on the inside. The truth is, until you confront these traumas, they continue to silently rule your life. But there is a path to transforming pain into strength, wounds into learning, and the past into a starting point for a new life. That's what we'll talk about here. Therefore, I want to ask you something. If this topic has touched your heart like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this message. And subscribe to the channel. When you do this, you're not only helping this content reach further, but you're spreading hope to thousands of people who also carry deep pain and need healing. Today, you'll discover that past traumas don't have to be the end of your story. They can be the beginning of a transformation. To facing the invisible marks of past traumas. Past traumas are like invisible scars that remain on the soul. Unlike a wound on the body, which bleeds and then heals, emotional wounds often go unseen. On the outside, a person may appear normal, working, talking, smiling, but inside they carry pain that screams in silence. How many people live this way? How many times have you smiled to avoid having to explain to the world the weight you carry? The truth is, traumas are not just bad memories. They are marks that shape the way we see the world, love, trust, relate, and even see ourselves. Trauma creates filters. Through them, what should be beautiful is often viewed with suspicion. What should bring peace generates fear, and what should be a promising future becomes a blocked path. Think of a child who grows up constantly hearing words of rejection. As an adult, even if someone truly loves you, the voice inside you still echoes, telling you, "You're not enough." Think of someone who's been betrayed in a relationship. Even at a new beginning, they may carry the fear of being deceived again. Trauma doesn't respect time. It doesn't fade just because the years pass. It's like a root buried deep in the soul, insisting on sprouting branches and bitter fruit, until it's uprooted. And here lies one of the harshest truths. Many of us spend years, even decades, trying to ignore these scars. We pretend they don't exist. We layer on top of them layers of work, responsibilities, commitments, even superficial religiosity. But when night falls and we're alone, they knock on the door of our minds again. Because unhealed trauma is like a poorly healed wound, just a small touch, and the pain resurfaces as if it happened yesterday. However, there's good news. You're not a prisoner of your past. What happened to you may have marked your life, but it doesn't have to determine who you are, nor who you can become. There is a path to liberation, and that path begins with courage, the courage to look within, the courage to face the pain, the courage to admit that there is a wound, because nothing can be healed unless it is first revealed. Jesus said in John 8:32, "And you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." This means that as long as we try to hide our traumas, they continue to enslave us. But when we have the courage to bring them to light, we begin walking toward freedom. Acknowledging pain is not weakness, it is the first step toward healing. Many believe that time heals all wounds, but this is a confining lie. Time alone doesn't heal, it only hides, and sometimes even deepens. How many adults today carry childhood pain? How many elderly people still mourn memories from decades ago? Time has no healing power, but God does. He's the only one capable of transforming scars into testimonies, pain into strength, the past into a starting point for a new life. Perhaps you're hearing this right now and thinking, but I've tried to change, I've tried to forget, I've tried to start over, and nothing has worked. I understand. Because healing from trauma isn't the result of human effort alone. It's the result of surrender. It's when you place your pain before God and say, Lord, I can't do it alone. I need you to touch this wound. And you know what's even more incredible? The Bible shows us that even Jesus, the Son of God, bore wounds. Isaiah 53:5 declares, but he was wounded for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The chastisement that brought us peace was upon him, and by his wounds we are healed. In other words, Christ himself understands what pain, rejection, humiliation, and abandonment are. He is not a distant God who looks down on you and says, overcome. He is a God who entered into human pain and overcame it, to show us that we too can overcome. Trauma tries to convince you that you are weak, that your life is too broken to be restored. But the truth is that in the place of your greatest pain, God wants to reveal the greatest victory. What seemed like a curse can become a message. What seemed like a prison can become a platform to free others. Therefore, today, I want you to allow yourself to take a step of faith. Acknowledge your wounds before God. Tell him what you have never dared to say to anyone. Because God does not reject a broken heart. Psalm 51:17. He doesn't turn away from your pain. He draws near. And when he touches, the impossible happens. Painful memories cease to be chains and become scars, reminders that you survived, that you overcame, that God was with you every moment. Reflect with me. What if your trauma wasn't the end, but the beginning of a transformation? What if what hurt you most was exactly what God would use to show his glory? Past traumas don't define who you are. They only tell part of your story. But God is writing new chapters, and he doesn't need to erase what happened. He can redeem. The spiritual healing and the power of faith over past traumas. Past traumas have a silent but profound effect. They shape thoughts, emotions, and decisions, often without us realizing it. But there is an even more powerful dimension that can transform these wounds, the spiritual dimension. Because true liberation doesn't just happen on a psychological or emotional level. It happens when we bring our pain to God and allow him to enter it, touching what seemed untouchable. Psalm 34:18 declares, the Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. This promise is revolutionary. Even when you feel alone, helpless, betrayed, or rejected, God is near. He's not a distant presence, not a vague hope. He's truly at your side, ready to heal, restore, and strengthen. Trauma often leaves us feeling unworthy of love, unable to trust, or unsure of moving forward. But faith reminds us that our identity is not defined by what we've suffered, but by God's love for us. Jesus showed us this in his life and teachings. He embraced the marginalized, healed the sick, forgave the betrayers, and welcomed the rejected. He showed us that there is no pain so great that it cannot be transformed by divine love. Imagine now that every wound you carry is like a seed. Trauma may have buried this seed in darkness, but God has the power to transform it into life. He can take every painful memory and water it with forgiveness, compassion, and love. And with every act of faith, with every sincere prayer, the seeds begin to sprout as forces that strengthen the heart and mind. Isaiah 61:3 tells us about this transformation. To give to those who mourn in Zion a crown instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, the garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. In other words, God not only removes pain, he transforms it into something beautiful and powerful that can sustain and inspire us. The oil of joy replaces mourning. The garment of praise covers the spirit of despair. What was once suffering becomes a testament to victory. But faith isn't just passively waiting for the pain to disappear. It requires action. A powerful spiritual practice for those carrying trauma is the prayer of surrender. This prayer consists of naming one's pain and placing every memory, every emotional scar directly into God's hands. Hide nothing, soften nothing. Speak to Him as you would a close friend, exposing every wound, every fear, every insecurity. Furthermore, meditating on Scripture is a transformative tool. Choose passages that speak of hope, redemption, and strength, and repeat them daily. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Renewing the mind is replacing patterns of pain and trauma with spiritual truths that edify, heal, and strengthen. Another effective practice is forgiveness. Forgiving those who have hurt us doesn't mean forgetting or justifying the wrong, but freeing the heart. Forgiveness dissolves invisible chains and makes room for God to enter with His peace. Many people carry trauma not only from events, but also from the resentment they hold within. Freeing ourselves from resentment is essential for faith to fully act in healing. And we mustn't forget that faith connects us to a power greater than ourselves. Trauma makes us feel powerless, as if everything is lost. But when we trust in God, we learn that we are not alone on the journey, that there is a purpose for every pain, and that even in the darkest moments He can guide us to the light. A powerful spiritual exercise is to keep a transformation journal. Write down daily the moments when the past tries to dominate you, the prayers you say, the feelings that arise, and above all, the small victories. Over time, you will have a record of your healing progress, and you will realize that each trauma you face strengthens your faith and gives new meaning to your story. Remember, God not only understands your pain, He wants to transform it into victory. He wants every scar to become a story of overcoming, every tear to transform into a learning experience, and every trauma to be reinterpreted so you can live fully. Faith, when genuine and applied, creates profound internal changes. It doesn't instantly erase memories, but it changes the way you relate to them, bringing peace, hope, and strength. And it is through this active faith that you begin to truly walk toward a future free from the chains of the past. As rebuilding the mind and heart, freeing yourself from past traumas. Past traumas are not just emotional experiences. They are deep imprints in the mind, shaping our perception of reality, our behaviors, and even the way we relate to others. To understand this dimension, we need to delve into psychological and philosophical principles that show how the mind processes pain and how we can rebuild it. Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, taught us that unprocessed traumatic experiences settle in the unconscious, influencing thoughts and behaviors without our awareness. This means that we often react to the present based on past pain, as if we were constantly reliving the same episodes. Resentment, anxiety, fear of rejection, or emotional blockages can be echoes of these traumas. Carl Jung, a psychoanalyst and philosopher, complements this view by stating that the collective and individual unconscious carry memories that need to be integrated for the individual to achieve wholeness. According to Jung, what is not recognized and accepted within ourselves repeats itself in patterns of suffering. In other words, ignoring or denying pain only perpetuates cycles of frustration and anguish. Healing begins when we bring these wounds to consciousness, accepting them as part of our history without defining ourselves by them. Modern science also confirms this. Neuroscience studies show that deep trauma alters brain circuits, impacting the stress response system and even emotional memory. This is why many people experience automatic reactions, memories that suddenly surface, triggers that arouse anxiety, fear, or anger for no apparent reason. But neuroscience also points to a great hope. The brain is plastic. That is, it is capable of reorganizing itself, creating new connections, and redefining memories and emotional responses. Change is possible even after decades of suffering. Therefore, the first step toward psychological reconstruction is accepting that the trauma exists and that it has left its mark. Denying or minimizing the pain only prolongs the suffering. This requires courage, the courage to face painful memories, uncomfortable emotions, and even aspects of yourself that you would rather ignore. The second step is to reframe the trauma. It's about transforming painful experiences into learning, growth, and inner strength. Viktor Frankl, psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, taught us that even in the cruelest circumstances, human beings can find meaning. For him, life never completely loses its value, and pain, when consciously faced, can become a source of meaning. Imagine someone who suffered profound rejection in childhood. If this person internalizes the pain, they may repeat patterns of insecurity and fear in relationships. But if they find meaning in the experience, for example, by learning to value themselves, protect their boundaries, and develop empathy, the trauma ceases to be an obstacle and becomes a guide to a more conscious and authentic life. Another essential aspect of the psychological approach is self-knowledge and self-reflection. What did this experience teach me about myself? What patterns emerge in my life because of this trauma? How can I transform this pain into strength? Help bring clarity and awareness. Through these reflections, we begin to realize that we have more control over our emotional lives than we imagine. Self-awareness practices can include emotional journaling, writing down thoughts, emotions, and memories linked to the trauma, helping to externalize pain and organize the mind. Breathing and mindfulness techniques, calming the nervous system, reducing anxiety, and creating presence, allowing us to observe pain without being overwhelmed by it. Guided visualization, imagining the trauma transformed into learning, forgiving yourself and others, and envisioning a lighter, more fulfilling future. Furthermore, positive psychology teaches that gratitude is a powerful bridge to reframing. By focusing on small victories, the lessons learned, and what remains good in our lives, we create new mental connections that weaken the power of trauma. Small daily steps of gratitude, even in the face of deep wounds, help rebuild emotional balance. Philosophers like Nietzsche also inspire us when they say, "That which does not destroy me strengthens me." This phrase, though simple, carries a powerful truth. Every trauma consciously faced can become inner strength, resilience, and clarity about who we are and what we want for our lives. And here's a crucial point: no approach works alone. Complete transformation happens when we combine faith, reflection, and practice. Faith gives us hope and connects us to a greater power. Reflection allows us to understand patterns, emotions, and consequences. Daily practice allows us to reframe, train our minds, and rebuild healthy habits. Finally, it's essential to act in the present, because change only happens in the now. Each conscious choice to face painful memories, to pray, meditate, forgive, and cultivate positive thoughts is a building block in the reconstruction of your new self. With each step, you move closer to a life free from the weight of the past, strengthened by experience, guided by self-knowledge, and sustained by faith. Past trauma is no longer a definitive sentence. It is an opportunity for learning, growth, and transformation. It's not easy, but it is possible. And most importantly, you don't have to do it alone. Between therapy, self-awareness practices, faith, and emotional surrender, there is a safe path to freedom and living fully. Freedom and transformation from past traumas. Look at your life right now and realize something powerful. You've made it this far. Despite all the pain, the losses, the memories that insist on hurting, you're standing. You survived. And this is already proof of the strength and courage few recognize in themselves. Past traumas no longer need to rule your life. They are not your final sentence. They can indeed be the beginning of a new story, written with faith, courage, and hope. Every wound you've carried to this day can become a beacon, illuminating the path of those who also suffer, showing that it is possible to rise up, forgive, reframe, and transform pain into strength. Remember what God teaches us. He is always close to broken hearts. He doesn't reject pain, he transforms it. He doesn't ignore tears, he wipes them away. And he doesn't let your past define who you will be. Romans 8:18 reminds us, I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. Every trauma we face, every painful memory, brings with it the opportunity to reveal our inner glory, our strength and our ability to begin anew. Now is the time to act. Take a deep breath, look within, and surrender your wounds to God. Accept your story, embrace your scars, and choose to walk toward freedom. With each step, you leave behind invisible chains and move closer to the full life you've always deserved. If this video touched your heart, remember to like it. Share it with someone who needs to hear this message. And subscribe to the channel. By doing so, you help spread hope and transformation to thousands of people who also suffer, showing that pain is not the end, but the beginning of a story of overcoming. Today, you have the opportunity to free yourself from the past, transform pain into strength, and write new chapters of your life with courage, faith, and hope. Trust, your story is not over yet. It is just beginning.